We struggled the last week to get Nassau County to turn on our heat because we were freezing in the building. And so unfortunately the air conditioning system had to be turned off. So I apologize if there's a little woman here. Nobody expected 75 degrees today. Today is a very, very important day for us. As you know, over the years, the Holocaust Center has had many events to recognize and honor the victims of the Holocaust, the survivors of the Holocaust. We've also had many programs done with various rescuers, people who put their lives on the line to save Jews and others who were being persecuted during the Shoah. Today is a special program. We're talking about the liberators, the people who actually went into the camps and opened them up and provided freedom to the people who were there. And we are so grateful for all those who are participating today, the Jewish war veterans and others you'll be hearing from. And thank you all. We've had a special connection here at the center to liberators because we had a very, very special liberator who was an intimate part of our family for many, many years. And that was Marty Horowitz. Many of you know Hy, knew Hy, and we are so grateful, Sally, and your family for being here today, as this program, in many ways, while honors all liberators, we particularly want to honor Hy Horowitz, one of our own. And a very interesting story. Hy and Sally went to France a number of times where Hy was recognized for his accomplishments and what he did during the war. And they spent time in a town called Melun, which his armored division had liberated. And they became, as Hy did, and everywhere he went, he became friends with everybody there. And the teacher there was corresponding with Hy and sent him a postcard with a stamp that had a picture of a Star of David and barbed wire. And that was actually a stamp that was being used in France to commemorate the Holocaust. And Hy being Hy, he went to the trouble of tracking down the artist, find out who actually created this drawing. And he found the stamp's artist, Robert Abrami. Robert Abrami came from a Jewish family in France, whose family had been rounded up in Paris. And he was the only surviving member of his family. All the rest of them perished. And he was an artist, and he created a painting of trying to depict his feelings about what the Holocaust was about, to capture what it was about. And that, in fact, became the stamp. And because of the relationship that he developed with Hy, he gave Hy the actual original painting from which that stamp was created. And Hy, again being Hy, and his generosity and his feelings towards our center, he donated that painting to us, which is right here, and which hangs upstairs outside of our Education Institute. I urge you, if you haven't a chance, to come up and take a look at it a little closely. It really captures the spirit of the suffering and what it meant to the people who were there. So we're very thankful, Sally, Q, and Hy, for donating that to us. And today, again, is very meaningful, and I appreciate all of being here, and I'm going to turn over now to, I guess, Marty. Hi, son, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief. I just wrote a few notes this morning. I really didn't expect to speak. It's been a long few months. It's an honor for me and my family to be here to celebrate not only Dad, but all of our veterans. Dad truly felt fulfillment during his years as a docent at this center. The people he met were all very, very special to him. But what was most special to Dad were the hundreds and hundreds of Long Island children that he met when he spoke at their schools. And he would actually, leave teary-eyed, talking about his experiences, and a lot of the children had tears in their eyes. He never got to graduate Swan Lake High School. He actually was awarded a high school degree from high school diploma from East Meadow High School when he was in his 80s. And you know that his college campus were the battlefields in France and Belgium. And his fraternity brothers were his fellow soldiers, some of whom I had the good pleasure to meet. I remember Osias and Flanagan. Flanagan could fix your car in about 2 minutes, and as long as Mom fed him, he was there. And these were his lifelong friends. These were his buddies. And you know, there's a lot of politics, of course, now going on, but these were the true heroes who actually did make America great and safe again. Not the ones who just talked about it. These men walked the walk. Dad's true pride, I don't know if you know this, but it was his service in the 7th Armored Division. For the last 3 years of his life, he could not ambulate. He was in his wheelchair, he had his aide, but whenever we left the house, he put on his white baseball cap with his lucky 7th emblem, and that's all he needed. And he left with a smile. He was very active in the 7th Armored Division Association. Almost, I'm sure every division from World War II had reunions. This Lucky 7 started their reunions in 1947, right after the war. And Mom and Dad went to many of the annual reunions throughout the United States. And as Steve mentioned, they also represented the Lucky 7th in France, in some of the cities that they actually liberated. The French Legion of Honor awarded him the title of Chevalier, but his great sense of achievement was that he was included in the 7th Armored Division Hall of Fame, along with generals like Knowlton and Hasbrook, who I also had the good pleasure to meet as a child going to some of these reunions. Sadly, the 7th Armored Division Association just held their 70th and final reunion last month. 70 years, and there were men who went there, all of them. These were the true heroes, and we pay honor to them today, this day, and every Veterans Day, and I salute them. And for those who are here, I salute you.
Thank you so much, Marty. Before I begin my presentation, there's just some organizations and people I would like to thank. When you were coming in, you noticed that remarkable World War II Jeep. And so I would like to make a special thank you to Gary Louie for organizing the Jeep here from the Museum of American Armor, as well as the two gentlemen who are the living historians, the director of the museum, Mark Renton, and Jeff Ehrlich. So thank you very much. I encourage everybody after the program, after you get something sweet to eat, to please go to our special exhibit room and see our current exhibit. It is an exhibit on loan from David Zwerin, the New York director of the Jewish War Veterans, who's in the back of the room. It's GIs Remember, and it's their experiences of liberating the concentration camps. In addition to that, we have some phenomenal artifacts that come from our archives and our own volunteers, so please do take a look at it. The other thing I'd like to mention is I hope that you all take one of these flyers for our upcoming program if you are interested in these kind of issues. I think on November 19th, we will be having a program looking at the establishment of the police and fire departments in displaced person camps. And the gentleman that will be our keynote speaker created the fire department and police department in the Fahrenwald DP camp. So please do mark your calendars for that. There's a lot of material on the registration desk from the Jewish war veterans, from the Museum of American Armor, so please do grab some brochures and learn more about them. I'd like to thank everybody for attending our program today, and this is presented in loving memory of Marty Horowitz, a longtime educator and volunteer and speaker at our center, truly deeply, deeply loved by everybody that knew him and met him. And this is also in tribute to all of our veterans. The reason that we are not having this program in November around Veterans Day is because the Jewish war veterans are so booked that we wouldn't have been able to have their participation, so that's why we're having it today on October 30th. I would like to convey my deep appreciation and respect to all of the veterans that are here, the Jewish war veterans and their color guard, Jack Holtzman and Gary Glick, as well as Gail Holtzman, the president of the Department of the New York Jewish War Veterans Ladies Auxiliary. So thank you very much for coming here. And a special thank you to Rabbi Swerdlow for coming and participating and doing the benediction, the invocation and the benediction, and also Gary Louie, who, if you read his little bio in the program, you can't help but be incredibly impressed because he created not one but two museums on World War II and the armament, and they're both incredible museums, and I really urge you to go and visit them. I'd also now like to thank the Horowitz family and ask them to stand so that we can show you our respect. I was part of our family, so you are our family, and we are yours. I had the privilege of knowing Hai for 8 years of being around a man of deep conviction and devotion to making the world a better place by sharing his testimony, his perspective, his wisdom about World War II and the Holocaust. If you bumped into Hai or Seymour Kaplan, who was sitting back there, he's also a World War II liberator and will be speaking at the end of our program. If you bumped into either one of these gentlemen on the street, you would probably just think they were ordinary people. But you'd be wrong. Hai and Seymour and other soldiers like them that fought in World War II have been labeled as liberators. But this term is not adequate. To liberate someone means to release them or to give them freedom. But Hai and Seymour did so much more than that. They rescued. They rescued the survivors. They helped bring them back to life. They didn't just enter the Nazi camps and open the gates. They saved lives and continued to do so long after they drove their tanks through the barbed wire fences. When the war ended, the Americans established a military government in occupied Germany. The priority was to rebuild Germany's economy and infrastructure as quickly as possible and to repatriate millions, several millions of people who had been displaced by the war. The unique plight of Jewish survivors was not on the Allies' list of priorities. Months after liberation, Jews still lacked clothing, food, and proper shelter. Jewish and Gentile American soldiers who witnessed this neglect of survivors launched a spontaneous and clandestine campaign to help Jews, even if it meant going against Army regulations. Soldiers took food from the mess, from the kitchens on their bases. They took clothes, they took medical supplies, they took other items, and they would give them to the survivors in these DP camps. One of the most effective actions they did was to write home and ask their families for help. These battle-weary soldiers started letter campaigns. They wrote to their fathers, begging them to get in touch with local legislators and beg them for help, ask them for aid. They wrote to their mothers, their aunts, their sisters, their wives, for toiletries, daily necessities, clothes, and religious articles. One GI stationed in Munich wrote, quote, "Mom, I have a request to make. Can't go into detail to explain everything, but please take my word and do as I request. In this area at the present time, there are 14,000 Jewish people who have somehow lived through 10 years of hell. No one is helping them. So we, the Jewish boys of the army, are taking things into our own hands. You know, Mom, I've never asked for anything from home before, but this you must do. Please follow these simple directions as closely as possible." And then he provided a very detailed list of what to send and how to send it. I found this letter and hundreds like it in the JDC, in the Joint Distribution Committee archives in Queens. This was in just one file, over 4 inches thick, hundreds of letters from Jewish and Gentile soldiers. And the title of the file was Appeals for Aid to Survivors by Soldiers Stationed in Germany. This was a major rescue attempt that was going on to help these people. Corporal Rubinoff, stationed in Amberg, Germany, wrote this in his letter home. Some of these people have no clothing other than their camp uniform, their concentration camp uniform. Others are wearing German army uniforms. A few of us are very interested in this, and we talked the problem over. We're getting as many of the men together for a mass meeting on Friday, at which time we'll discuss ways and means to untie this Gordian knot, meaning all the red tape and bureaucracy within the American government that prevented direct aid in the quantity that these people needed it. We are also rebuilding the Amberg Synagogue. Now, these are soldiers who have just fought, for those of us that are civilians, incomprehensible battles against the Germans. And now some of them are taking upon themselves not only to help with food and clothes, but they're rebuilding the synagogue that had been destroyed during Kristallnacht. He goes on, the finest materials and labor is being used, and the whole job is on the town. They destroyed it, and it will be their job to rebuild it. We plan on a big rededication with the town officials. It will be opened by Rosh Hashanah, and we're trying to secure prayer shawls. That just blows me away. Private First Class Andy Cohen was in awe of the Herculean rescue actions of Army Chaplain Rabbi Abraham Klausner. He wrote, Klausner disregarded Army red tape, channels, etc. He has wrought a miracle. Out of nothing, he has made provisions to feed these people. Not well, but enough to live on. He has found bolts of cloth out of which to make clothes. He has found a shoe factory in the midst of rubble. He has printed a directory of survivors which brings hope and joy to men and women who had lost almost all, desire to stay alive. He's the one that created 6 volumes just of survivors' names and copies, and they didn't have printers like we do now, but hand wrote and hand mimeographed copies to bring to all the DP camps so people could check the list of names and see if anybody was still alive. He has browbeat the Red Cross into giving soap, bandages, and medicines to 2 hospitals that he organized, again slashing through red tape and channels. All this he has either out and out appropriated, meaning just taking from the Army, or got with GI's contribution. So out of their own salaries, they donated money, both Jew and Gentile. These are some of our unknown heroes, forgotten and unacknowledged soldiers and chaplains who selflessly rendered aid and championed the survivors' plight to an unaware American public. During war, ordinary soldiers become heroes, and they're awarded medals. But after the war ends, some soldiers continue to be heroes, and they deserve to be remembered and recognized, and that's what today's program is about. The Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center is lucky. We've had the good fortune to be associated with some of these heroes, such as Marty Horowitz and Seymour Kaplan. Whenever Hy gave testimony, you could hear the proverbial pin drop. Young and old alike sat at the edge of their chairs memorized. I watched this over and over and over again with audiences. One group of people that were profoundly affected by Hy were active duty United States Marines and naval shipmen from the Officers Training Program at the Maritime College up at Fort Schuler in the Bronx. We've been contacted by their commander to create a program for them, And we did so, and Hy was one of the speakers, as well as Annie Bleiberg, one of our Holocaust survivors. We conducted the program for 2 years, and one day we were invited to go up to Fort Schuler and speak for the entire campus. Over 500 officers and other military personnel heard Hy's testimony and were moved to tears. And these were people who had already been in battle. They were absolutely moved to tears. And at the end of the program, the commander presented Hy, Annie, and me with a challenge coin and kept us there for hours because they wanted to ask more questions and to take pictures. And this is my coin. It means a lot to me. Hy was beaming and glowing. I was kvelling and plutzing. When Hy spoke to teenagers, he received the same response. Students would rush him after the program. They wouldn't leave until they had their picture taken with him. They wanted to ask him more questions. They wanted to touch him. He was a living hero. He was also the quintessential mensch, an engaging educator and a consummate gentleman. We at the center, staff and volunteers, all benefited from the effect that Hy had on others. And I'll just share 2 examples. First, Hy and food. Every month we have a meeting for all our volunteers. And every single meeting, we had the biggest buffet of food that you can possibly imagine. And this was provided by Hy. All different types of bagels, different types of cream cheeses, different types of herring and different salads and cakes and cookies and pastries and luckies, and you can't even imagine. And I really think that Hy was having flashbacks to his time in the Army because he really did bring enough food for at least 1 battalion, if not 2. And if I'm lying, I know our volunteers are here, then say something, and I know I'm not lying. All the food that he brought was donated to Hy by the owners of God knows how many bagel bosses across Long Island, from bakeries such as Gabilla's and others. The owners absolutely adored and loved Hy, and because they loved him, we benefited. The second way that we benefited because people loved Hy was through material donations. And one of them, Hy got in contact, I don't know how or why, but with the National War Museum in the Netherlands. And they gave us an incredible collection of artifacts from, during the occupation, the German occupation of the Netherlands. One of them is my favorite artifact. It's also the smallest. This is not the real artifact. The real artifact's in our archive. This is a 3D facsimile. And because of Hy, and also the brilliance of one of my colleagues, Judy Vladimir, who I think just stepped out of the room, unfortunately, she made 3D artifacts of 3D facsimiles of some of our artifacts, so we could create a collection that could be sent to schools and used in other places. It's an absolutely phenomenal teaching tool. And this tiniest of our artifact that Hy got for us was made by a Jew in hiding near Amsterdam. And it's a painting of a canal scene. This is one of the most perfect examples of Jewish resistance during the Holocaust, and can provide so many lessons from it. So, Hy just continues to give and give and give. Sorry. In the special exhibit that I mentioned, which I really want you to go see, in addition to the poster exhibits, we have artifacts. And one of these artifacts, again, donated because of Hy. It is watercolors made by an American soldier and of his witnessing of his experiences when he liberated one of the camps. I believe it was in another museum. The artist is Jack Heenan. And Hy thought, no, it needs to be here in our museum. And so he got it for us. And so please, go take a look at it in the exhibit room. When you go through our permanent museum, you will hear Hy's testimony. You will see his pictures when he was a young and gorgeous soldier. He was still gorgeous, even when he was a speaker here. When he was asked why he volunteered at our center, I replied, "I volunteer because I want the young people today to know what happened during the darkest period of world history. They don't learn this in their history books or see this on film. It's when they see a liberator or a survivor speaking personally about what they encountered, then they know exactly what happened." And I could not agree with him more. Seymour Kaplan, who I mentioned before, also a liberator, he liberated Dachau. We will have the privilege of asking him questions at the end of the program. But I want to end my presentation by sharing just a little bit of Hai's testimony.
The Allied military forces, including the United States, England, and Russia, began to liberate the concentration camps in 1944.
We found what was known as Camp Ohrdruf, Ohrdruf. This was Hitler's pet project. He was building an underground communication center to service the entire Wehrmacht, the entire German army. Within minutes, the German guards were dispensed with. And we found what we just could not believe. Bodies strewn all over, one on top of another. We learned that in a camp of 40,000, 17,000 had perished the month before we arrived, many on the day before we arrived.
But one
At this point, I would like to ask Gary Louie to come up.